Imagine you're driving home late at night, the highway empty, your headlights cutting through the endless dark. Suddenly, a childlike figure appears in the middle of the road, staring straight at you, forcing your heart to stop. You swerve, your hand shaking, but when you look back, there's nothing, no trace of anyone ever being there. Now picture this, a woman soaked to the bone crawling onto the road, screaming, her face pale under the cold moonlight. Or a man in a clown costume stepping out of the shadows, waving before sprinting towards your car with something sharp in his hand. These are not scenes from a horror movie. These are real encounters people faced while driving at night, moments where survival depended on a split-second decision. Roads at night hold more than just silence. They hide mysteries, dangers, and sometimes pure evil waiting for the right moment to strike. Welcome to The Price Paid, where we dive into the most unnerving true stories that will make you think twice before driving alone after dark. Subscribe now if you dare. It was a quiet Sunday evening on April 18th, 2021, when Mitch Kuhn was driving back from a racing event along the Hume Highway in Bardia, Australia. The sun had set, and the world around him had already slipped into the kind of darkness where every passing shadow looks alive. At around 7:40 p.m., just as he was settling into the long drive home to Gold Coast City, something appeared that would change the way he looked at highways forever. Out of nowhere, standing in the middle of the road, was what looked like a small child. The figure was pale under the glow of the headlights, wearing a blue Parker, and seemed to be attempting to cross the lanes. Mitch was driving at nearly 60 miles per hour, towing a massive toy hauler behind his vehicle. In that moment, he had only seconds to decide whether to swerve or slam on the brakes. Either move would have almost certainly ended in a catastrophic accident. With no safe choice available, he pushed forward and braced for the worst. The car barely missed the figure by inches. Mitch's heart raced as his mother, sitting beside him, screamed in shock. Instinctively, his mother reached for her phone and called the police. The voice on the other end assured them that patrol cars were being dispatched immediately. Relief washed over them for a moment. Mitch, still trembling, could not shake the sick feeling in his stomach. What was a child doing on an isolated highway at night, miles away from the nearest town? He replayed the moment over and over in his head, and within an hour he called the police again, this time offering dashcam footage that clearly captured the mysterious figure. What the officers told him next should have eased his mind. They said the child matching the description had already been found and was being returned to his home. Mitch posted about it later that night, writing that he had felt sick to his core, but was relieved when he heard the boy was safe. But then the story took a turn that made it far more disturbing. Just as his post began to spread online, the New South Wales Police Department released an official statement. In it, they denied ever finding a child. Their officers, they claimed, had searched the area for nearly 8 hours, scouring the surrounding land until almost 4 in the morning. Despite the effort, they found nothing. No child, no footprints, no evidence that anyone had been there at all. The contradiction was unsettling. Why had Mitch been told on the phone that the child was safe, only to be faced with an official denial hours later? Was it a miscommunication, a careless mistake from a dispatcher who thought the child had been found, or something more sinister? Official reports tend to be precise. The fact that the department stated clearly that no child was located added another layer of confusion. Theories began to form. Some believe the child had been picked up by a parent who noticed he was missing, but that raised another question. How could a small child end up miles from any residential area in the first place? Others speculated darker possibilities, that the child might have been kidnapped by someone who happened to be nearby, vanishing before police arrived. And then there were those who wondered if Mitch and his dashcam had captured something beyond explanation, a vision or presence not entirely human. For Mitch, the experience left scars. Driving on the highway afterward was no longer the same. Every stretch of dark road seemed to carry the weight of that figure appearing suddenly from the blackness. It was not just about the mystery of whether it had been a child or something else, but the helplessness of realizing that, in certain moments, human lives hang by a thread. Had he swerved, he and his mother could have been killed in an accident. Had he struck the figure, it could have been far worse. Either outcome haunted him. What lingers most in this story is the silence. The silence of the road that night, after the police confirmed they found nothing. The silence of unanswered questions about how the figure came to be there. And the silence of a case that has remained unsolved to this day. For those who heard the story, it became one more reminder that sometimes the most terrifying encounters happen not in haunted houses or graveyards, but on ordinary roads under ordinary skies. Highways are strange places. They stretch across lonely landscapes, cutting through forests, fields, and deserts. At night, they become desolate paths where isolation magnifies every fear. People have long reported bizarre sights on highways. Strange figures appearing on the shoulder, hitchhikers who vanish when offered a ride, or even shadows darting across the lanes with no explanation. Mitch's story fits into this long tradition, yet it stands out because of the evidence. There was dashcam footage, there were police reports, and yet the truth still slipped away into the dark. Some locals whisper that the child might not have been a child at all. There are old stories of spirits said to wander the Hume Highway, tales of apparitions that lure drivers into danger. Most people dismiss these as folklore, but after Mitch's encounter, those stories resurfaced. The way the figure appeared and disappeared without a trace seemed almost supernatural. And perhaps that is what makes the event unforgettable, not just the horror of almost hitting a child, but the dread of not knowing what he had really seen. Mitch himself has said that he is grateful nothing worse happened, but admits that the memory keeps him awake some nights. It was not only the image of the child in the headlights, but the uncertainty that followed. To this day, he does not know whether he narrowly avoided tragedy or witnessed something that was never supposed to be there in the first place. For the rest of us, his story serves as a warning. The next time you find yourself driving down a long, empty highway after dark, remember that what you see ahead may not always make sense. Sometimes it could be a child, sometimes it could be nothing, and sometimes it could be something far stranger than either. In the early hours of May 8th, 2021, Mali Perales, better known on TikTok as Piss Pasta, was driving home after a night out with friends in Belmont, Michigan. The road they traveled was quiet, the kind of silence that only exists in the hours when most of the world is asleep. The air was damp and heavy, and at around 2:30 in the morning, the group was laughing, enjoying the ride back. But the laughter died instantly when something moved at the edge of their headlights. A shadowy figure was crawling onto the road. At first, no one was sure what they were looking at. The figure seemed distorted in the dark, human but strange. Someone in the car muttered in disbelief, and then panic set in. They circled back, curiosity and fear clashing with every breath. When their headlights cut across the road again, they saw her clearly this time. It was a woman, her clothes drenched, her body trembling. She was sitting in the middle of the road, crying, her arms either waving weakly or hitting her own head in some desperate act. The night was cold, just above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the water dripping from her body left wet streaks across the pavement. Unsure whether they were witnessing someone in danger or stumbling into a setup for a robbery, Malie and her friends did not get out of the car. Instead, they called 911. The woman collapsed onto the road shortly after, and soon the flashing lights of first responders cut through the dark. They took her away to a nearby hospital, leaving the group shaken and silent. Hours later, Malie returned to the spot, and the road was still wet where the woman had been. There were drag marks near the riverbank, as if she had clawed her way out of the water. Investigators later confirmed that she had fallen into the river and swum across in the freezing dark before collapsing on the road. The story became stranger the more they learned about her. The woman was 28, a student originally from China named May. She had disappeared from Kalamazoo, a town over 60 miles away, just 2 days earlier. Her friends reported that she had mentioned feeling stalked, watched by someone she could not name. When police pieced together her condition, they suspected she had fallen into a dissociative fugue state. It is a rare psychological condition where stress or trauma causes someone to lose their sense of self, sometimes wandering for days or even building a completely new life without memory of who they were before. In May's case, it seemed to explain everything. The reports of her wandering into strangers' homes, greeting people she did not know, acting strangely in neighborhoods. The night she ended up in the river may have been the climax of her fugue, when her mind finally broke under the weight of paranoia and exhaustion. The fact that she survived it all was remarkable. Stories like May's remind us that the horror of the road is not always supernatural. Sometimes it is the human mind, fractured and confused, creating terror not just for the person suffering but for anyone who crosses paths with them. Yet the strangeness of her appearance, drenched and disoriented, crawling from the shadows, was the kind of sight that leaves a mark on those who saw her. For Malie and her friends, it is an image they will never forget, a real-life nightmare that unfolded on an ordinary road at night. But the roads do not only hold broken souls wandering out of rivers. Sometimes what blocks your way is something far darker. On October 12th, 2016, In Sheffield, England, a family left the Drawbridge pub after midnight, their night filled with laughter. The streets were empty, the city asleep, when they turned onto Grange Mill Lane. That was when a man in a clown costume leapt from the shadows and blocked the road. He waved, but not in a way that offered comfort. It was a gesture that froze their blood, a predator taunting its prey. As the driver tried to reverse, the clown charged at the car. He sprinted with a manic energy that suggested something more than a prank. Panic gripped the family. In those weeks, England had been plagued by what was known as the killer clown craze. Just 3 days earlier, a man named Simon Chiney had been attacked by a knife-wielding clown, leaving him permanently scarred. The story had gone viral, sparking a wave of imitators who dressed as clowns to terrify people at night. Some were trolls looking for attention, but others carried knives, chased children, and forced their way into cars. For the family on Grange Mill Lane, the threat was all too real. They pressed the accelerator, and the car roared forward as the clown hurled himself aside at the last possible second. Had he been slower, he could have been killed, but had the driver hesitated, who knows what might have happened. The encounter was brief, but its weight lasted long after. This was not an isolated incident. Across the United Kingdom, police received dozens of calls every night during that period. Reports of clowns stalking the streets, some laughing, some carrying weapons, all spreading panic. The hysteria swept through entire communities, reminding everyone that sometimes terror spreads like a virus. The clown craze was not born from one man, but from the fear he inspired, replicated again and again by those who wanted to share in that power. Looking back, it is easy to dismiss these incidents as a strange chapter of social media culture, a fad that spiraled out of control. Yet for those who lived it, the memory is not so easy to shake. The image of a clown emerging from the shadows, standing still until you stop, then charging at your car, is the stuff of nightmares. And unlike a ghost story or a rumor of a haunted road, these were real people. Some were pranksters, yes, but some carried knives. Some wanted to hurt. And that unpredictability is what makes it terrifying. From May's disoriented crawl across a wet Michigan road to the manic sprint of a knife-wielding clown in Sheffield, these encounters show us a pattern. The night hides people who are broken, dangerous, or simply unpredictable. A road can be quiet one moment and a stage for fear the next. The headlights reveal what waits, but they cannot tell you if it is someone in need of help, a predator lying in wait, or a madness spreading through society. What ties these stories together is the chilling truth that sometimes you cannot tell the difference until it is too late. On the night of June 1, 2018, a police officer from Fuller, Texas, was driving back to the station after his shift. The road stretched empty ahead of him, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the still night. His headlights illuminated the vehicle in front of him, which suddenly swerved hard into the next lane. At first, the officer thought the driver had lost control, but as his eyes focused, he saw what had caused the movement. Something was lying in the middle of the road. It was not debris or a fallen tree branch. The officer's stomach tightened as the light revealed a young woman sprawled across the asphalt, her body stretched out horizontally as though placed there deliberately. She was wearing a blue shirt and appeared completely motionless. For a brief, chilling moment, the officer thought he had stumbled across a corpse, a victim discarded like evidence by some unseen hand. Every part of the scene screamed danger, either the result of an accident or something more sinister. When he approached, however, the woman stirred. Against all expectations, she moved, opening her eyes and attempting to stand. Relief and confusion hit at the same time. As it turned out, she was not dead at all. She had crashed her car into the ditch moments earlier. Intoxicated beyond reason, she had wandered from the wreck and in a daze decided to lie down on the highway, as if the world around her no longer mattered. Later tests confirmed that her blood alcohol level was dangerously high. The concussion from the crash had only worsened her judgment, leaving her in a state where she behaved irrationally, oblivious to the fact that she was seconds away from being run over. The officer realized just how close death had come. Had the car in front of him not swerved in time, the young woman would have been crushed. Instead of a bizarre story to recount, it would have been another tragic headline about drunk driving. It was a reminder that roads do not forgive mistakes. A single reckless decision can unravel into disaster in seconds, leaving scars that last forever. But while this woman's encounter ended with survival, there are stories where the outcome was far more grim. Decades earlier, in 1946, the city of Texarkana, straddling the border between Texas and Arkansas, faced one of the most terrifying crime sprees in American history. It began on February 26th, when 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend Mary Jean parked their car on a secluded road after a movie date. What was meant to be a quiet moment together turned into a nightmare. Out of the darkness, a man emerged from the woods. His face was covered by a white sack with 2 holes cut for eyes. He ordered Jimmy out of the car. At first, Jimmy thought it was a joke, but when the man raised a pistol, the truth became unavoidable. He struck Jimmy with the weapon, fracturing his skull, then turned on Mary Jean. She tried to escape into the trees, but he caught her and attacked her before being frightened off by approaching headlights. Both survived, but the image of the masked man lingered, seared into their memories. The attack was only the beginning. A month later, a driver stumbled upon a parked car with 2 young people inside, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore. At first, he thought they were asleep, but the grim reality was revealed when he approached. Both were dead, shot in the head. Investigators recovered only a single cartridge as evidence. Then, in April, another couple met the same fate, killed with a firearm of the same caliber. The city of Texarkana fell into panic. Fear spread quickly, and with good reason. The attacker seemed to choose couples on isolated roads, striking without warning, then vanishing without leaving a trace. Residents called him the Phantom, a specter of violence who haunted the edges of town. People stopped driving at night, couples canceled outings, and the streets emptied after dark. Even the FBI became involved, but the search yielded no answers. The terror peaked when 2 more were attacked, this time surviving to describe him. They recalled the same sack mask, the same build, but the inconsistencies in their descriptions of his ethnicity confused investigators, and suspicion fell on whether the victims were hiding his identity. Despite mounting pressure, the Phantom slipped away, leaving only fear behind. Eventually, suspicion turned toward a man named Ewell Swinney, a car thief with a history of arrests. His size and build matched the accounts, and when police attempted to arrest him, he hinted that they wanted him for more than car theft. Yet no direct evidence connected him to the murders. Without proof, prosecutors could not convict him of the killings. He was sentenced to life for theft, and while many believe he was the Phantom, he never confessed. He died in 1994, taking whatever truth he carried with him to the grave. The story of the Phantom remains unresolved, a chilling reminder that not every mystery finds its ending. To this day, the roads around Texarkana are remembered not just for their long stretches of emptiness, but for the nights when a faceless predator turned them into hunting grounds. When placed beside the story of the intoxicated woman lying across a Texas highway, the contrast is striking. In one, death brushed so close, yet pulled away at the last moment. In the other, death arrived without hesitation, leaving entire communities in shock. Both reveal the vulnerability of roads at night. They are spaces of unpredictability, where anything might appear under the glare of headlights. It might be a young woman in need of help, or it might be a masked figure who does not want you to leave alive. The truth is that highways carry both the ordinary and the extraordinary. They are arteries of human life, carrying travelers, workers, and dreamers. But they are also stages for nightmares, where random chance or deliberate malice transforms an ordinary drive into a haunting story that refuses to fade. For the survivors, life never returns to normal. For the victims, their stories end on the side of lonely roads. And for the rest of us, the lesson is one of vigilance. The darkness hides more than shadows, and sometimes the real danger is not what lies off the road, but what steps onto it. On January 8th, 2024, the night stretched endlessly across the highways of Western Australia. A truck driver was pushing through the darkness, the engine's steady hum the only companion for miles. At around 11 o'clock, roughly 60 miles south of Perth, he faced what would become the most unnerving encounter of his life. Out of nowhere, 2 figures appeared on the road. They seemed to emerge from the night itself, dragging something large across the highway. The driver's instincts kicked in, and he swerved violently, narrowly avoiding a collision at a dangerous speed. Tires screeched, the weight of the truck rocking precariously as he fought to keep control. When he came to a stop and looked in his mirrors, the road was empty. The 2 figures, and whatever they had been carrying, were gone, swallowed back into the shadows. Later, as footage surfaced, viewers slowed the video frame by frame, trying to make sense of what had been dragged. The shape looked disturbingly like human legs, pale and wearing shorts, ending in dark shoes. The idea that 2 people might have been hauling a body across the highway in the middle of the night was horrifying. Others argued it was an animal, though its shape felt too close to human proportions. A few suggested it could have been nothing more than a bizarre prank with a life-size dummy. But if it was a prank, Why risk such a dangerous setup in the path of a massive truck? The mystery was never resolved. No reports of missing persons matched the timeline. No evidence surfaced to explain the figures. The question remained: what were they dragging, and why did they vanish so quickly? For the truck driver, those questions did not matter. What mattered was that he had survived a brush with something he still could not explain. Even now, when asked, he struggles to put into words the dread of watching two shadowy figures appear in his headlights, carrying something that should not have been there. The unsettling truth about roads at night is that they do not always deliver answers. Sometimes they only leave you with fragments, glimpses of something half seen, half believed, and the mind does the rest. The driver would forever remember the sensation of being thrust into a horror he could not define. Thousands of miles away, on September 16th, 2018, another man experienced his own terrifying night behind the wheel. An Uber driver in Long Island, New York, was nearing the end of a ride. The evening had been uneventful, the kind of shift that ends without memory. But then another car tore past him at reckless speed, missing him by inches. Before he could even react, the driver of that car slammed on the brakes and stopped directly in front of him, blocking the road. The man stepped out, furious, his movements erratic and wild. He pounded on the Uber's windows, screaming at the driver to get out. His words were a jumble of rage and threat, impossible to ignore. The passengers in the back cried out in panic, urging the driver to escape. Fear flooded the car. No one knew if this man was simply angry or if he carried a weapon. The Uber driver reversed quickly and attempted to find another route, but the nightmare was far from over. The other driver jumped back into his car and began the chase. Street after street, no matter where the Uber turned, the angry driver followed. The sense of being hunted turned what should have been a simple ride into a desperate flight. At one point, the Uber approached a red light, and the realization hit that stopping would give the pursuer a chance to catch up, to reach the car, and possibly drag them all out. Every second felt stretched, unbearable, with panic clawing at everyone inside. But then, in an almost cinematic turn, salvation appeared. On the other side of the intersection sat a police cruiser. The Uber driver sped toward it, honking, flashing his lights, drawing the officer's attention. The intoxicated pursuer was quickly apprehended. Police confirmed he had been driving under the influence, his behavior unpredictable and dangerous. The Uber driver later admitted that had the police not been there, he feared for his life and the safety of his passengers. The incident could have ended with blood spilled on the asphalt. Another grim tale of road rage turned deadly. The two stories are vastly different in their details, but eerily similar in their effect. In Australia, the road delivered an unsolvable mystery. Two figures dragging something into the night and vanishing without explanation. In New York, the road became an arena of human rage, where one man's intoxicated fury nearly ended in violence. Both reveal the ways in which highways turn into stages for fear. Sometimes the threat is physical, tangible, like a man hammering on your window with rage burning in his eyes. Sometimes it is elusive, like shadows dragging a shape that might have been a body into the dark. In both cases, the road becomes a place where safety collapses, where the ordinary act of driving transforms into survival. What makes these stories so powerful is not just what happened, but what could have happened. The truck driver could have collided with the figures, ending in tragedy. The Uber driver could have hesitated at the wrong moment, giving his pursuer time to unleash violence. Each outcome balanced on a knife's edge, shaped by split-second choices. And that is why night drives carry their own mythology. For some, they are peaceful stretches of solitude, but for others, they are filled with the memory of encounters that refuse to fade. Every shadow, every pair of headlights in the mirror becomes a reminder that the road hides more than distance. It hides the unknown, waiting to step out when you least expect it. The stories we have explored share one haunting truth. The road at night is never as empty as it seems. It may appear quiet, silent, and safe, but under the glow of your headlights, anything can appear without warning. A child standing in the middle of an Australian highway. A woman soaked and trembling, crawling from the river onto the road. A clown sprinting at your car with a blade. A faceless phantom who turned lovers' lanes into hunting grounds. Figures dragging something unknown across the asphalt. A drunken man pounding on windows, chasing an innocent driver. Each one a different shape of terror, but all tied together by the same setting. A lonely road under the cover of darkness. What these stories remind us is that the road is a place of vulnerability. When you are driving, you are trapped inside your vehicle, bound by momentum and the narrow strip of asphalt in front of you. Decisions must be made in seconds, Do you stop for the figure in the headlights? Or do you keep going? Do you turn around to help a stranger in distress? Or do you stay inside and call for help? Each choice can mean the difference between survival and tragedy. There are lessons buried in each of these encounters. Stay alert when you drive at night, because not all dangers come from other vehicles. Some come from what steps onto the road itself. Avoid stopping in isolated areas whenever possible, because what seems like someone in need may turn out to be something else entirely. Always call for help rather than acting impulsively, because the risks of confronting the unknown can outweigh the instinct to be kind. And above all, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. But even with preparation, the truth is unsettling. These stories show us that sometimes there are no answers. The child on the Hume Highway was never found. The Phantom of Texarkana was never brought to justice. The figures in Australia vanished into the night, leaving only speculation. The road does not always reveal its secrets. It leaves behind silence, mystery, and scars on those who live to tell their tale. That is what makes them so powerful. They are not stories of ghosts in old houses or legends whispered around a campfire. They are moments pulled from ordinary life, from the same highways you and I travel every day. They prove that horror does not need shadows or superstition to thrive. It only needs the night, the road, and a moment when everything turns wrong. And that is why we share them. Because each encounter is a reminder that safety is fragile and that fear is never far away. The next time you are driving alone at night, remember these stories. Remember that headlights may reveal more than just the pavement ahead. If you want to hear more chilling tales of what happens when darkness takes hold of the road, make sure you subscribe to The Price Paid. Because out there, on the highway, the next story could be yours.